Tales from the Trials, the dog sports podcast about everything and anything you can do with your dog. This is Jazz, and today I'm joined with Amanda Faye of Forward Focus Agility.
Hi, thank you for having me.
That's about as much as I had planned.
Okay, good.
All right, so Amanda, we met on TikTok and then in person at a NADAC agility trial. Do you want to go into what NADAC agility is? Because your wall behind you says you know a lot more than I do.
It does. So NADAC stands for North American Dog Agility Council. Um, and it was one of the first two agility venues to actually be established. So back in oh gosh, people are going to hear this and correct me, but this is my vague understanding of history in the agility land, is that back in the late 80s 90s, USDAA and NADAC were the only two venues. The other venues came on after that. And NADAC was founded by Sharon Nelson. And over the years, the focus on NADAC has been on the dog's longevity and welfare, as well as course style and handling style. It's been with a bit more of a focus on distance handling. And I say that a bit more of a focus because you can do a little bit of distance, because to get certain titles, you have to do distance challenges. Or in my case, you can do a lot of distance and work on other titles that are distance related. So, of course, now we also have AKC, which is probably the largest agility venue in the United States in terms of trials and activity, and UKI and UKC as well. So that is NADAC agility. And one thing you'll see in NADAC, of course, in addition to distance challenges and a lot of distance in general, are lower jump heights. And you will also see hoops and barrels, which you generally don't see in other venues, other than in the United States CPE Speedway events, which are separate from their agility events. But they look similar because tunnels and barrels and hoops are also used in regular agility.
Gotcha. So, how did you get started in all this? What is your tale?
My tale is what is my tale? Back in the early 2010s, I think it might have been 2010 or 2011. I moved from Los Angeles to Missoula, Montana. And I moved for a job. I was into long distance bicycling, and I worked at an art museum. And so I was going from working at an art museum to going to working in this, you know, uh, organization that was involved in promoting long distance bicycling and traveling by bike, as we said. And I didn't own a car, and I traveled by bike everywhere. And I rode through LA everywhere. And I never had a car when I lived in Montana either, which was interesting. And so I got to Montana and I rented this little cottage, and it was wonderful. And I'd been there about 6 months, and I was in my early 30s, and I was like, I really want a dog. I'd grown up with dogs my whole life. And I really was looking for the day as an adult where I could have my own dog, and this is my dog. And so I went to the municipal animal shelter, and I had my sights on this hound, on this black and tan hound dog. Um, and when I went to go meet it, she was just totally out of control. And at the time, I mean, this is baby Amanda, who has no idea what dog training is or anything. Just and I'm just like, this dog is a little bit much. And I turn around, and there's this little black and white, kind of furry dog in the kennel behind her. And this little dog is just sitting there, and by little, he wasn't super little. He was maybe 40 pounds. And he was just so calm and polite. And I asked him to sit, and he just sat right down. And I'm like, wow, you smart little dog. And he was a border collie, and I didn't know anything about border collies. Didn't know anything. So I went home and I was like, let me look up this breed. Like, would this breed be good for my life? And I realize now that's like not what typical people do. They just go, oh, I like this dog, and they get it. I was like, I don't know anything about this breed. Like, what is it? Like, and so reading that it was an active breed, that they were herding dogs. And at the time I was a marathon runner and a bicycle, and I did all this. I was very active at the time, and I was like, oh well, yeah, this dog will be fine in my active outdoor lifestyle, where I bike and walk everywhere. And um, we live basically in the outdoors. And so I called in sick to work the next day. and and I borrowed my friend's car. I called in sick to work, and I went and adopted Astro. Um, and so then I had been talking to my vet, and she just like kind of recommended nonchalantly, doing some training classes. She was like, well, border collies are really smart and they do all sorts of stuff. So you should go take like a training class. And so I went to this place in Missoula called Sit Happens. Um, and at the time, the head trainer was Sarah Spencer Hall, or Sarah Spencer. She's not Sarah Spencer Hall anyway. Um, and it's now called, no, it was called Go Fetch. Now it's called Sit Happens. So when I went there, it was called Go Fetch. And I took my like basic obedience with her. And then, everyone was like, well, you have a border collie, so you should do agility. Because apparently it's just like a foregone thing that you have a border collie, you should just do agility. So I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll check it out. Again, this baby Amanda had no idea. And so we went to an agility class and we had lots of fun. And he was a border collie, and so he's really good at it, just kind of naturally. Also, like a lot of things I say about Astro are not transferable to other dogs, because it does turn out that he was just kind of like an amazing dog. I get all teary eyed because he's my
Sometimes that happens.
like no, and because even like I have had border collies since him, and I'm like, oh no, this was like that was special. Like, because like even I'm like, no, oh he was special. And even I've had like trainers when I worked with him, they were like, he's a little special, Amanda, and special in a good way, not special in a you know special. No, he was special in a like above the rest kind of way. Um, and
He had that.
so, and I didn't know that. That also set me up for these like false expectations throughout my agility career, because when your first agility dog is just like amazing and just does things and you don't know what you're doing, but your dog does. Then when you go to a dog where they don't know what they're doing and you don't know what you're doing, you start to have problems. Um, So I trained with Astro in agility for a few years, and then um, Sarah said, "Hey, there's a NADAC trail going on, like an hour away from here next weekend. You should like go and do like a tunnelers run and like a touch and go run." And she was like, and we didn't have very 2 years in, and we still didn't have very good weaves, because I didn't care, because I was just doing it for fun, right?
Yeah.
So we didn't have weaves. So she was like, just, go do this, and there won't be weaves, and you'll just have fun. And I was like, okay. And she said, also like, it's in an equestrian arena. So don't be surprised if like he totally blows you off and doesn't like really do anything or whatever. And I was like, okay. So I'm totally prepared. That my friend Arlen drove me, because I didn't own a car. So he drove me there, and it was in the middle of winter. So it was snowing out, and it was like January 2014. And we get there. I walk in the door, and I do as my instructor said, just go find someone who looks like they know what they're doing and tell them you're new and you don't know anything. And I said, okay, which is being, neurodivergent and literal, exactly what I did. I walked in and I said, hey, I've never done this before. My instructor said I should come. And she like, here's my registration that she got me fill out. And so they're like, oh, great. And,
Oh, I love
so,
that.
I'd never like really walked a course before. And I was incredibly nervous. I was like, oh my God, this is really scary. Um, but so they wrote my name in on the board. I'm making this story way too long. I'm sorry.
That
Um,
it's a podcast. If you don't talk, we have no content.
okay. They wrote my name in the board as they do, and I went up and actually Chris Nelson, who is the head of NADAC now. Uh, okay, we have a visitor. Was
Yes.
the judge, and so I put him on the start line and fully expecting like nothing to happen, and we queued, and he was like, it was funny. I'd never seen him. He was a border collie. He was always intense. He could stare. He had the eyes, but I'd never seen like game face in a
Mm.
dog. And like I didn't have a huge lead out. I just had 15 feet or so, and so I back away and I look at him, and I'm just like, and he's boom, just like, and I'm like, oh wow, that's new. And he cued his first run. And this was actually a single run format trial, which I have
Oh,
like rarely done since with NADAC. Yeah, because this was long enough ago that they were kind of still, some of them doing single run versus double run. So he queued the first run. And then there was a second tunnelers run though. So they had two tunnelers. It was just like we changed the course. And then I can't remember if he queued the second one or not. And then we didn't queue touch and go because we'd rarely worked with hoops, and he was kind of like, What?"
what is
Um,
that?
but we had a great time, and we had a lot of good like feedback, and we left, and I had these ribbons, and I was like, "Well, we're gonna have to do this some more." 'Cause,
And the addiction
they
started.
gave me, we won ribbons. Like I was like, really excited. And then, so that was like early 2014 or 15. It was early 2014. And then after that was when I got sick and went down all the roads. So we didn't trial again until 2019, right before the COVID shutdowns started
Gotcha.
happening. Because I was sick, I went on disability. Yeah, the whole thing kind of came to a grinding halt for us. And hold on just a moment. Hey, go to your spot. Hey, go to your spot. Thank you. Okay, sorry. Um, so that's how I got started, was Astro. Um, and then along the way, I like was a foster for a lot of dogs. Astro was a really great neutral dog. After I got sick, he was trained for service work and was task trained. Um, and Andy came along when I fostered his litter. Um, and there's a whole backstory there. But Andy ended up staying, and 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 Andy is
Andy's
Andy.
Andy.
Um, and yeah, so that's how I got into it. Just because, when you live in Montana and you have a border collie, you do agility.
I feel like if you live anywhere and you have a border collie and no working farm, you do agility.
Yeah, maybe, or at least something. You do some kind of dog sport. Yeah,
You end up in the cult somehow.
you do.
So, who are your current dogs? I know them because I've gotten to meet them, but the
Yes.
wider world may not know.
Right. So Andy is my pit bull staffy basset hound. There's also some golden retriever and German shepherd in there. But he is uh, he is 7.5 years old, and he is, according to this wall, he is Natch 3 and versatility Natch 1. Triples. Is he triple superior? I don't know. He might be. Um, so yeah, he's just done really well. Then there is Algo Mas, which means something more, who I adopted after Astro passed in 2022, who is laying on my lap getting his belly rubbed right now. He came from Border Collie Rescue. He was supposed to be a Border Collie, but he is a Malinois German Shepherd Husky mix. But he looks like a Border Collie.
He,
I
he
have
does
people
look like
argue
a
with
border
me
collie.
about it too. All
Just carry the
Um,
embark results with you all day.
he behaves nothing like a border collie. So, and then the youngest is my border collie, who is a border collie, came from a breeder, um, Amadeus, who we call Dex or Dee Dee. And he is 16 months old, and he debuted in NADAC last month in
How
intro.
did that go?
Um, it did not go like it went with Astro. Well, no, actually, it did go. So initially, it did go like it went with Astro. Um, his first couple, yes, we're talking about you. His first couple of runs, we did grounders, intro grounders, and I did training in the ring. So I went in with his ball in my hand because I really want him. My approach with him has been building off of everything I've learned with Andy and with Moss, and also kind of wanting to do some different things. So, my plan with doing intro and NADAC with him, intro level, and for those of you who don't know much about NADAC, there are 4 levels. Elite is your highest level, equivalent to like masters in AKC, open, and then novice. So those are similar. But then there's also what they call intro level. To enter novice, your dog has to be 18 months old. To enter intro level, they have to be 15 months old. And in intro, the highest jump height you can jump is 16. So even if you have a dog that will jump higher than that, they are required to be lower because NADAC traditionally has standards about dog welfare and longevity. So jump heights are lower and they won't let you do certain things, which so in intro, that means like for my 20-inch dog, we can only jump 16. And the other thing about intro is that, yes, the courses are much shorter because it is intended for dogs to get trial experience and not necessarily be super competitive. Um, and the other thing is there are no weaves at all in intro regular standard class. Although I guess technically if you do intro weavers, you would have a set of weaves. Um,
It's the
so
exception.
they offer it depending on the trial. They can offer it in any NADAC class that's offered, but they don't usually offer it in every NADAC class. Often it's only in what we call natch classes, which would be your natch is your NADAC championship, which would include your standard or regular class, your jumpers class, and for NADAC championship, you are required to do chances. So those are what we call your natch classes. Um, so you have to be 15 months old to enter in intro. And my goal with Dex was to treat intro like training. And I want him to not feel a difference as much as possible, to approach trialing like training, to approach it with that focus, to approach it with that mindset, and to have that, kind of not have the stress that, for example, Algo Mas has had, which, and if you look, people can look at my videos on TikTok. I've got a lot about Algo Mas and his ring stress.
He said, "You
Um,
said my name."
yes. um, so I ran with the ball in intro grounders. I put him on the start line. I've committed myself that I will run him the way I've trained him. And now to people listening who do agility, that's probably like an obvious statement. But when you do like ultra distance that I do, trying to do like bonus box, I've trained him from the start for bonus box work, which I probably have to explain here too. Um,
We
but
can come back to it.
yeah, come back to it, bonus box. So I've trained him basically that I'm just never going to be near him. And but the like the instinct when you go into the ring the first time is to move in and support your dog more, right? And to just like maybe not like get super close, but to just like not be quite. But I said, no, I'm going to run the way we trained. I'm not going to come in here and get super close to him, and which would stress him out because I never do that. I never
Yeah,
go in and
it's
get
new.
close to him. So I was committed to that, and I went in, and it was a short course. And yes, I had my ball in my hand, and he knew I had my ball in my hand. And he He was perfect. And Grounders is a course where there is a distance challenge for every level, and it's just a line basically across the front of the ring. And if you can do the course from below the line, basically sending your dog to do most of the course far away from you, instead of a 10-point queue, it's a 15-point queue. Now we weren't running for points, but we ran behind the line in both runs,
That's cool.
and he was amazing. I was very proud of him. But then, in day one, he was pretty good. He nailed his contacts, held his contacts. I do stopped contacts, um, but I didn't do such a good job of preparing him for in and out of the ring protocols
Mm,
as I would have liked. Um, I mean, I did prepare him for it, but then I didn't do a good job holding to what those protocols should be. So by day two, he started getting a little bit stressed, and same with day three. He just was kind of feeling kind of the stress of it. Um, and so we're continuing. I've done some more NADAC intro since his first trial. So he's had a couple of trials now. And I've also done some FEO runs in CPE, um, just to continue working on the premise that this is exactly the same. We do things the the protocol for getting in and out of the ring and what we do and everything, it's all exactly the same for him in his mind. And we're
yeah,
getting there. We're getting there. I
that's a
mean,
hard.
I'm never he's like it's clearly a more amped up environment, right? There's way more dogs, way more people. Um on the day of his first trial run, at that first trial, that week he had just passed the CGC. But of course, he had to go jump on the judge. In his
Oh, yeah,
we had
that's the
finished the
fun of
first run. It didn't happen during the run. I was leashing him up, and the judge, because the judge has to watch to make sure he gets leashed. So the judge kind of like looked, was like kind of, and I guess I was blocking the view because the judge sort of like looked over like around my shoulder, and then Dex was like, "Oh hey," and I was like,
Let's go
"Well,
play.
of course, it's over. Everything's done, and now you're gonna do that." But so
At
it's
least you
been a
made it
different
to the end.
experience with him, but it's also just been. I mean, he definitely is game face on the start line. Um, but it's just been a different experience because I've done so many things differently than I did with Astro or with Andy or Moss. So,
That's cool. What have been the most surprising differences between training Andy and Moss and then going back to a border collie?
um, the biggest difference is the gas pedal, I'd say. Um, and the barrier for frustration, or the tolerance for frustration. So, by gas pedal, I just mean, if I tell Dex to go and he starts striding, he starts running, he doesn't really stop. There are no breaks until you literally say stop. Okay, stop. No, we're gonna do something else. Like, you have to actually apply the brakes to reset something or do something else. With Andy, it's like a push. Well, no, this is okay. I'm sorry, but I'm not talking bad about you. Um, he's like sitting here under a blanket, and it's like a perfect example. You've seen Dex come up here multiple times because he's just circling around and coming up for attention, and Andy's under a blanket. So, with Andy,
Hi, Dex.
the gas pedal takes a lot of, like, you've got to like really shove it down.
Mm,
And with him, it's, if you don't keep pressing on the gas, he's just going to stop and wait for direction. He's not gonna like keep going and keep like taking things until you like tell him what you want. He's just gonna stop and go, okay, what now? Whereas Dex is just gonna like keep like the gas. You have to put the brakes on. So with Andy, it's always, you got to push that gas pedal. With Dex, if you want him to stop, you're gonna have to push the brakes. Moss, don't I can't. What's different with Moss? Um,
everything.
it's everything, and it's been such a journey with him because it started out one way. He in try like he never like I never needed to like cheer him on or anything, and now these days he's needing a lot of encouragement because he's just been through so many ups and downs. Um, so he's just a total different story because of the behavioral complexity there.
Want to go into it? You can say no.
No, no, we can. Yeah, I mean, we can talk about it for sure. Um, so I do want to, yeah. So, okay, Moss came to me from Border Collie Rescue, was not a Border Collie, which is fine because he looks like one. But when I got him, he definitely had some kind of like anxiety. It took him a while to really get to a place where he was like calm in the household, but he eventually did. Um, and he also had some food allergies, which were making him uncomfortable, and we figured that out pretty quickly. Um, and he was really, really happy doing agility right from the start. I got him as an agility partner, so he came home and he was an adult dog already, so I didn't have to like wait to like for him to be old enough to do anything. We started doing stuff on the contact board. I taught him really excellent contacts, if I do say so myself. Um, and he has really excellent weaves as well. And he was really happy going to class, but he was definitely very environmentally stimulated. And when I started trialing him, it was really challenging to deal with like peak arousal and him going like over threshold. The other challenge was that when he'd been in foster, they'd taken him to lots of dog parks, and so he then developed barrier frustration, and I had been working through that reactivity, that barrier reactivity, which was also leash reactivity, um, and the thing is, he does like other dogs. He's fine with other dogs, but it's the barrier that creates that frustration, and then those outward behaviors of growling or barking or lunging or whatever. And then when you then put that into an agility trial context where you have, a fencing around the course and you have dogs passing by, you can have a dog that responds to that. When we first started trialing, it actually wasn't that big of an issue. He would get distracted, like other dogs would get distracted, but he wasn't like, going at the fence or anything. Um, there was an incident with someone else's dog who was fence fighting, and then he started fence fighting, and then that became a thing between him and that dog specifically. um, he's a good single event learner, and he does associate things pretty like narrowly, which can be good or bad, but in some ways it's good. um, but he had a lot of high arousal in those early days of trialing. And he did really well. I mean, we saw you when we moved across country last year before he totally shut
2 years
down.
ago.
Was it 2 years ago?
Yeah,
No, it
it
was
was 23.
2024.
Well, 2 years of trials.
Oh, yeah, I mean 2 years of trials,
Sorry, that's how I count time.
but it was only 1 year ago.
Sorry.
It was July 2024. Um, and it was before he was shutting down, and you remember like, and he was happy, and he was a little stressed in the ring from time to time, but he was mostly happy and mostly running really well. And he continued like that, and then some different, so that reactivity was there, but it wasn't that bad. um, and then Dex came home, and we had moved, and all those things, in addition to some specific things that happened at trial, caused him to start to shut down.
Mm.
um and I didn't really understand, like, in like hindsight. Yeah, right, hindsight is always 2020. I can go through now and go, oh, I know what happened, but at the time I didn't understand what was happening. We had gone to a trial in Maryland, and I stayed at a Motel 6. And when I was walking Andy and Dex in the morning, and Dex was like 10, 10, 12. No, he was about 4 months old. So Dex was about 4 months old. And someone there had these two off leash pit bull mixes that attacked us
Oh,
that morning before the trial. Um,
Ooh, that's
and
a great way to start a trial morning.
yes, and of course, I'm trying to choose which of my dogs that I can like. So I'm picking up Dex. Um, Andy fortunately had his jacket on. It was really, really freezing cold out. Andy had his jacket on, and Andy is not an aggressive dog by any means.
No,
And you know Andy.
no.
He will stand on business. So this dog came right at him, and Andy scared him off. They did make contact, but there was no like mouth contact. It was this. The other dog was trying though, but Andy was like, "No, bud, don't even."
Go away.
The funny thing is, the dog was actually bigger than Andy, but like I said, Andy stands on business. Um, and so the other dog ran, and of course, I was trying to scare the dog off too. So the the dog finally ran off. The other dog got scared of me when I like
Good.
but the other dog was not going to be deterred until Andy was like, "You did not want a piece of this." Um, and so he was fine. Like there were no like lacerations or um, wounds or anything, but of course Andy has had a history of soft tissue injury. So I'm kind of freaking out about that, and we get to the trial, and of course Moss is entered in this trial too, and I'm trying to deal with things. There's some, kind of pet or dog care people there, so they're checking Andy out. We're doing all this stuff, and I go to run Moss, and I haven't not paid attention to him that much all day long. And he stops on the bottom of the dog walk like he's supposed to, and his bladder lets go
Oh no.
because I haven't walked him in I don't know how long. I mean, I know I took him out in the morning, but like, and
You weren't in
so
your normal trial routine.
right, because of everything that had occurred, right, and so he'd already been like kind of having stress running through trials. He'd had Dex come home, and the puppy being home totally changed his routine and definitely like impacted him. And the move had impacted him, And we'd had the whole yellow jacket thing happen. We were attacked by yellow jackets in our backyard when we first moved here, and he
I
wouldn't
forgot
go out in
about
the
that.
backyard after that. It took like a month to get him to go back in the backyard. Um, so now he's releasing his bladder on the bottom of the dog walk because mom has been distracted entirely by what's going on with this other incident. And that was like when the shutdown in trial really, really just like started getting massively worse and worse. And everything just started like he just was like yeah, really shut down at that point. Um and also still struggling, right, with some of his barrier reactivity and barrier frustration. Um, so at that point, and I had been working with a trainer here, Megan Skelton, um, who does Control Unleashed, pattern games and things. And I'd been working with him, but now we were just like, gosh, bottom of the barrel. We've dug into this hole. So I finally decided we tried working through it for a while. And I think it was maybe December or January where I decided to put him on Prozac. Um, and so that was good because it did definitely help like all the anxiety and stress that he'd been feeling. But any drive was totally gone. I
Hmm.
mean, he, there was no, there, he was a mid drive dog to begin with. It was a combination of drive and arousal that really allowed him to be so fast. Um, and of course, the arousal was entirely gone. And so, what drive he did have left was, pretty minimal. And it was a struggle. Like, I still trying to train and go to classes, and just I was running. I don't run with my dogs, but I was running with my dog. I was pushing my dog around the ring. I was just like, "Come on, please, please play with me." But in the meantime, we were able to work through a lot of that stress, a lot of the nervousness, a lot of the reactivity, and eventually, I decided that I wanted to try. And actually, what I was going to do was try switching him to a different medication because I thought he probably still needed a medication, but that one was going to be, yes, but we're talking about, it was going to be too much for him. So, um, as he started coming off of it and we like reduced the dosage to safely come off of it, he started like acting like my dog again, and he started, his personality came back and his drive came back, and all of a sudden he was zooming around the ring and running fast, and I was not having to go with him to get him to do that. And what we decided, and I say we because I work with different trainers, and I always have these conversations with it. Well, I guess ultimately I decide, but I say we, was
Mr.
to
B.
wait to try the other medication, and just see how things panned out. And we ended up never putting him on that medication because, the behavioral work that we'd done stuck. He's doing really good. His biggest thing had been stranger danger, and he's been really good about that. Although you did tell off a judge last weekend. Um, he did tell off a judge last weekend. But mostly the stranger danger has gotten a lot better. He is the barrier frustration, we still work on it, but he's, the pattern games work. If I start counting, he runs over to me. He will call off of it now. The interesting thing is, like, I have a neighbor dog. The neighbor dog fence fights. Moss fence fights with the neighbor dog. If I call him, he'll come inside though. So it's self reinforcing. Please don't burp in my face. And it's, I think it's less about reactivity at this point and more about he's enjoying telling the neighbor
He's
dog
having
off.
fun.
Um, and so it's a work in progress with him. My goals with him have changed. I'm hopeful that someday, when he was first starting out, I had people who I really respect who do bonus box and stakes distance tell me that he was going to be a stakes dog. And I was happy about that because I wanted him to be a stakes dog. I think it's farther off in the future. I do think it can happen, but I think it's time will tell what happens with Moss, and what I do with him. Um, but he needs the pressure off of him. So I run Andy and Dex, and Moss gets to do things if we're in the mood, if I have energy for it.
Fair.
But
Seems like you're
he's
working
doing
for it.
tricks now, and he's working on his advanced trick title through
Nice.
AKC. He's got his novice and his intermediate. Um, and they're all going to start playing and making noise now. On cue. Thank you.
That was amazing.
So, and what I've been doing, like, I've been working on some tricks with him, and I think I did some like musical freestyle with Astro back in the day. And so I think he does really enjoy tricks, and he does really enjoy getting to like work with me. So I think we'll keep on doing tricks. He does still do agility. I mean, I still take
Yeah,
him to trials. But just there's no Andy and Dex both have goals when it comes to trialing. And Dex or Moss's goal is, just to not blow up in the ring. Yeah, it's been quite a journey, from when I first got him, right? And I think a lot of people, get a dog and we want to do all the things with them. Or maybe we don't. Maybe we get a dog and then we discover all the things with them. And And along the way, we also discover that some of those things are fun for our dog, but also can cause stress. And we want to help them through that stress, but maybe we don't know how, or we don't really understand what all is happening. It can be really challenging. Um, Agility is a sport that has to happen at what we call optimal arousal, which means you don't want your dog to be calm. You don't want them to necessarily be relaxed. You want them to be ready to run and run fast and do athletic things. But you need a focused mindset. And you also have to do it around incredibly distracting things for them and for you. And some dogs are better at others at kind of naturally focusing in on their handler. Some dogs struggle more in the environment. Can you take the bone away so we don't have to listen to it? Um, And Moss definitely fell. No, you're going to just bring it right up here. Algo Mas fell in that category of the environment was really stimulating. There were many interesting things going in the environment. He would go over the threshold of optimal arousal into over aroused. And it was also hard to tell, at the time, even though it wasn't that long ago, I was much less versed on this. He has given me the opportunity to become much more well informed and understanding of it. Um, but we often mistake arousal for drive. Well, he's really high drive when it's over arousal. And they're because drive often implies that they're focused on the thing that they have drive for. Whereas arousal and over arousal is that excitement. We need that excitement. We want it. But when it goes over, right, then you get like zoomies, right? Common over arousal that you see in the ring. But also, if you're talking about a dog that's got even some like mild reactivity, when you combine that with over arousal, you can get barking at people in the ring. You can get just barking in the ring. You could get maybe someone walks by the fencing and the dog's just excited and barks at the person walking by, lunges at the person walking by, or a dog walking by, right? All of this kind of goes, you think about things happening at, for example, at the dog park when you get dogs that they're kind of calm and then the arousal goes up and then all of a sudden something that's really friendly goes into a different sphere of not friendly. And the same can happen when you're working dogs at, when you're trying to work them at their optimal arousal and maybe they're going over that threshold. And there's any other underlying behavioral concern. And to be clear, Moss was never a dog where there was any bite risk involved. He's never in that realm. Although we do know that any dog can bite, right? And any dog. Um, but that was
Dogs have
never a concern. That was never like where his behavior was going. Um, but I, definitely was concerned that well, nobody wants to go in the ring and their dog is just out of control, right? Running around, zooming, unable to do things. And I initially, even when he would be super zoomy in the ring, he was responsive enough that, like, even though he was super zoomy, if I just started handling, he would do the things. So, so for a while, I thought that because I could pick him up and start handling while he was being super zoomy, that meant that the arousal was okay, and I just needed to work on my start line. And I didn't understand, that delineation. Um, and I was listening to one of your other episodes yesterday, and you mentioned Laura Waldby and her ring stress class. And like Michelle, I did that at a gold spot with Algo Mas. And it definitely helped a lot. Um,
Laura's so freaking cool.
I think also for Moss, because he was never toy driven. I think that if he had been toy driven, a lot of this would have gone differently. Um, but he's not necessarily toy driven, although, and I go through this on my Patreon, I did work through a secondary reinforcer with him, which means I can use a ball with him because the ball means food. It's a secondary reinforcer. Um, and at this point, I've done a lot of engaging in understanding how he likes to play and how he likes to be rewarded. You often hear me talk about butt rubs because that's his favorite thing. Um,
He
and
does like his
just
booty scratches.
he does like his booty scratch. And how he likes to play, which is kind of like an interesting play style. He wants to chase and pounce. I joke that he likes jump scares because, like, if I jump out of a corner and go rah, like he likes that. Um, and he wants to like physically play with you too. Um, and so I've also been going through an exploration of how to incorporate the way he likes to play into his agility training so that he is motivated to play in the way he wants to play, but with some of the rules and criteria that I would like as part of the game. Um, and So I think his whole trajectory would have been different if he was toy driven, and I could just get a tug out and get him to tug with me. Um, but he's not. And there are a lot of people out there who are struggling, going through getting in the ring. Um, and we don't talk about it as much in agility. Like Laura talks about it. And she's got classes and her TikTok is full of showing her working through it. Um, and but mostly I think people are like embarrassed by it and they're waiting for that day that like, oh, my dog's going to focus. Like we'll get through it eventually. Um, but it doesn't happen by magic, when you have, well, none of it happens by magic, but
Dang, that'd be so much faster.
it would be. It really is. And I've explored this even though it came about working through Moss, I see it now in Andy and I see it now in Dex. And even though it's different and it presents differently, I can see now when they are sometimes uncomfortable in the ring or, having some emotions about something. Um, so yeah, he's taught me way more about dog behavior than I ever realized I didn't know.
It's always fun. That's the case.
Yeah.
So you started with NADAC because that was just essentially the first trial you went to.
Yes.
What makes NADAC so different? Because I know we talked about like bonus boxes and stakes
Yes.
and grounders and all of these terms that like you don't hear if you aren't in NADAC, and it's
Yeah.
like, what is the language?
Um, so what makes NADAC different? Well, what I think makes NADAC different will be different than what someone else tells you makes NADAC different. Um, but from my opinion, what makes NADAC different, in addition to what I've said in part one about the focus on the dog's welfare and longevity, um, in terms of lower jump heights, and some different programs that they have that can allow your dog to train longer or not have to do um, as many high impact activities, but still engage in being handled and running. Um, for example, like also Andy has a jump height exemption in NADAC, which he doesn't get at any other venue because he's part Basset Hound and his front legs turn out. And also they do it based on a height to weight ratio as well. And that's in the interest of allowing dogs to continue to perform and not have as much high impact, but have a long career. Um, so that's one difference. And you see that also in the games classes that NADAC offers. So when we talk about games, so in part one, I mentioned Natch classes, Natch being the NADAC Agility Trial Champion Award. And that's their championship title. Natch classes, to get a Natch, you have to have so many cues in what they call regular, which is what others call standard or agility. You have to have a certain amount of cues in jumpers, and you have to have a certain amount of cues in the chances class. And chances is a distance challenge. At the elite level, you have a minimum of a 20-foot distance behind a line. You have a requirement to have a switch or rear cross behind a line. And there are some other requirements that the chances class has that are unique to NADAC. And so chances is what makes NADAC different too. At any, not talking about kind of the big distance, but if you want to get a championship in NADAC, you are going to have to be able to do those minimum distances that are done in elite chances, which are pretty big in comparison to, things like fast in AKC or you can't chew on that right here, or or gamblers in UKI, which I've done, and like jackpot in CPE,
Gotcha.
which the distances are much not as not as big distance. and different, and not requirements in terms of NADAC. It's a numbered course behind a line, and in jackpot it is too, and I guess in UK gamblers it is too. Um, so the numbered course behind the line, but again, it's a big line. It's minimum of 20 feet, and usually it's more than that because judges are mean. Um, no, they're not. Judges are nice, but sometimes they're mean in chances. Um, So then back to the games classes. So those are your Natch classes. Your games classes are, we actually do gamblers in NADAC, and yes, there is a line and there is a numbered course in it. But it's not as bad as chances, is what I will tell you. The distance in gamblers is not as bad as chances. We also have grounders, which we talked about in part one, which is hoops, barrels, and tunnels. We have, which is great for older dogs who no longer want to jump or do high impact like contacts, but they can still run around and have fun and be handled and do the teamwork and even do big distance if you want to, but it lowers the impact. There's also touch and go, which looks a lot like a regular agility course, but there are no jumps in touch and go. There are hoops. Um, and there are no weaves in touch and go. And it's meant to be a really fast course with discriminations. Um, often, often you see the contact tunnel discrimination in touch and go. And yeah, it's really fast, and it's run the same course at all levels in touch and go. So novice, open, elite will all have the same course. You just have a different amount of time to finish the course. Um, um, I don't remember if are there any other games? Oh, Weavers. So Weavers is obviously weaves, and tunnels and hoops. Um, you do NADAC. You chair NADAC trials. Remind me what the other games are. Are there other games? Did I miss any?
I mean, those are the only ones we've had at trials.
Okay.
So if there are, I don't
I'm
know that
sure
they
like we're
exist.
missing something super obvious and I can't think about what it. Oh, tunnelers. Duh.
Oh, I thought
There's
you said that one
tunnelers.
already.
Oh, did I don't remember if I did or not. Okay.
I don't think.
There's
I think that was part one.
okay. Well, also there's tunnelers, and tunnelers obviously is all tunnels.
It is very
The
fun.
other thing that I was going to say that makes NADAC different is a couple things. One, it is a good luck venue, which means when you step to the start line, your dog is on leash. You have to wait for the judge to say good luck before you can take your leash off. Um, and you have to leash your dog before you leave the ring. So that's a little bit different in terms of the process of getting in and out of the ring, which can change your protocols. And then the other thing that's different is there are no refusals in NADAC. So if your dog runs past the jump but doesn't take it, as long as they didn't take an off course, you can come back around to take that jump and there's no fault. It's just time. Um, and yeah, so there are no refusals. Now, however, that is in regards to running like kind of standard in any division or class. If you are running the bonus box, which I'm sure we'll talk about eventually, and you're not in flow, which means you would have a refusal, you don't get the points for that sequence. So you have to be in flow. You can't have refusals and do bonus box work. You can still queue, you just won't get the extra points for doing the distance.
Gotcha. Um,
Oh, that is
the
also
other
what
fun.
makes that is also what makes DADAC different is the bonus box program.
I was gonna say they also have to run naked, which just means no
Oh yeah,
collar, no
you have to
harness.
run naked, no collars. Yeah, no collars allowed in NADAC. Um, and then yeah, so what the other thing that I think that really truly makes NADAC different is the bonus box program. And this is at the elite level in every class. There is a distance line or box set on the floor, like an area set on the floor that's outlined by whiskers or tape that they put on the ground. And it's usually about a 20 by 20 box, square, or rectangular area. Sometimes it's just a line across the front of the course, and that's always really challenging, but it's always challenging regardless. And the goal of the bonus box program is to handle the entire course. You put your dog on the start line, you walk over to where the taped off area is, and you handle the whole course from that bonus box. And originally, you had to do the whole thing. Now it is set in sequences, so you earn points by sequence. So like obstacles 1 through 6 is one sequence, and then it might overlap 6 through 10, and then 10 through 15, and then 15 through 20. And you have to get 3 sequences while you are in the box and the dog is in flow, so no refusals. Of course, it has to be a queue in general, um, but you have to have 3 sequences to get a bonus, to earn a bonus, which is a certain number of extra points. If you do it with a certain speed, so if you meet a certain speed benchmark, you get a certain number of points. If you're under that speed, but you still got the sequences, then you get some fewer points, but still bonus box points. If you get 2 sequences, it's called a distance challenge, and you get, again, if you're over 100 DRI, which is a certain yards per second, then you get a certain number of points. And then if you're under the 100 DRI, but you still got 2 sequences, then it's like 10 points or something extra.
And I'm just gonna clip all of that when I eventually do the NADAC 101 video and just
There you go. Just yeah,
there
just
we
take
go.
that.
I'll have
There
to
you
be
go.
that part of the video.
And so you can earn extra points. So you can earn a 30-point queue, for example. And it also means that you rack up champion titles a lot faster. Um, and they also have 3 different divisions devoted to what they call stakes. So the bonus box program at championships is called stakes, and there are 3 stakes divisions. There's starter stakes, which is the easiest division of the distance, handling the course from distance, and the taped off area is quite large that you get to run from at champs. Then there is silver stakes, which is the second hardest level, which is definitely a lot more challenging. And then there is super stakes, and just go find a chair to sit in and learn to handle a course from sitting in a chair, because super stakes is like
That's
you have
honestly a
very
good
little
example of
room.
it.
And it's funny because you have very little room, and when people think of distance work, they often think that we're not moving, that we're like standing and like just pointing, but you move a lot when you do distance. You just have to learn to move in place. And depending on your dog, like Dex, I can make a lot smaller movements and still get the big distance and get it accurate. Andy, I can get huge distance with him, but it's like standing in place doing an interpretive dance. I have to really move and really show him movement. And I can do it, but I have to stand in place so that I can get the points. So I've been learning how to, it's a good thing that I have a history as a dancer, um, because I'm literally learning to do these like dance in place to show him where to go. Because if I stop my movement, he will stop. Because again, his gas pedal like has to be pressed down to the metal all the time to get him to move. So stakes, I think, is a big thing that makes NADAC unique, and it's also like if you really want a challenge, um, it's definitely challenging. But it's super fun because like when you finally like when you're doing something that's huge distance with your dog and you're, 70 feet away and you're getting them sequencing, it's like you're connected, and like my teammate is way out there, but they understand me. And it's really a cool feeling.
We've got a few people who always try at our local trials, and it's so fun to watch, especially when it finally clicks.
Yeah.
And everybody gets really loud because we all know how difficult that is to train.
It takes a lot of bravery to step up, to put your dog on the start line and walk over to the bonus box. Just that action
Because it's
alone.
almost never near the start line.
Oh, it's yeah,
It's
no.
usually like in
You're
the
always
middle
like,
of the ring.
but it's also like it's just going, I'm gonna try. And like that aspect of having the bravery to just step away and say, I'm gonna try. Um,
Please stay, please stay, please stay, please stay, please stay.
um, yeah. You have to have a start line to do bonus box, which might be why Moss will never might never. Although, like, because they're in sequences, theoretically you don't have to be in the box the whole time.
I've
You
heard
only have
about
to do a
that.
certain number of sequences. Um, that said, I've tried the strategy last year with Andy of like, well, I only need two sequences, so if I can get back in the box by the time I do this, that like just doesn't work. Like taking one step out of the box to just provide a little support, no problem, you can get back in. But like you're generally not. I say this, but I did it with Moss a few weeks ago. Most of the time, you're not going to be able to work your way back into the box. That said, there is the rare occasion where you might find yourself in the box and be able to stay there. Roger's course from July, I
Hmm.
ran that with Moss a few weeks ago. And just from the nature of the fact that your path goes through the box, and by the time I was there, Moss was like happy and running, and I didn't like. So I sent him into the tunnel. I was in the space that I needed to be in. When he came out of the tunnel, he was going and had pedal to the metal. So I didn't have to keep going with him, and I was able to do the last two sequences from the box. That's pretty
Nice.
unusual, though. It's like pretty like it just happened to be the right design, and the box was in the right place that happened.
That's fun. So we've mentioned it a couple times. You do have your own training group, training business words, called Forward Focus Agility,
Yes,
and you do have a Patreon for that. How
we
exactly
do.
does that work?
Um, so how it works is there are a few different levels. There is a free level, and you can become a member for free. And there you get to view my journal of working with Mosh through all of his reactivity. So that's completely free. And I think I'm going to be doing a case study webinar on Moss eventually. Um, but so there are different offerings there that are for free. There's a monthly training tutorial for free as well as part of the free membership. And then so then there's some different things too. Then there are a couple of paid levels that are, I think, um, you know what? Let me just like, can you still see
Just
me
pull it up.
if I just pull it? Yeah, I was gonna say like just pull it up and I can tell you what the membership levels are. Um, because of course, so then there is a $10 a month level. And so that gets you access to basically all the content that's behind a paywall, some all the video tutorials, Andy's weave retraining program, which is how I got the super big distance that he has on his weaves now. So that is a retrain. But then also there is a separate program called Armchair Weave Warrior, which is me teaching Dex from the ground up his weaves, using a lot of the tactics that I used in fixing or retraining Andy, and assessing mechanics and different exercises the dogs needed to learn to build the muscle memory to weave properly and always weave fast. Um, so that's all the back to basics. There's a monthly live stream Q&A. You can download training plans and instructions, and the community chat. You get access to everything. There's a level above that is $25 a month, and that includes, so that's just everything that you just had, but it includes 10 minutes of video review each month. Um, and then if you want one-on-one coaching and a one-on-one training plan, that's $150 a month. Uh, Yeah, I think even at the back to basics, the $10 a month level, you get a lot of content. The There are different collections. There's a thing on tunnel drive and working with tunnels and in and out of tunnels and lots of tunnel exits and entrances, but also how to think about diagrams, for example. And you've seen some of the graphics and things that I did, right? So there's graphics and diagrams to kind of explain what's happening when your dog strides and where they're going and when they're committing and when they're not committing, and or when they're turning or when they're in collection, and um, how to time your cues properly, especially with the distance work that I do. Timing is, crucial to being able to not have a refusal, just stay in flow. So it's definitely, I think, a really good value. You'll see lots of the tutorials to see the mistakes that I make. You'll see how I fix them. Um, and you get to travel along the journey with me, with Moss and his, you know, continuing to work through his reactivity, working with, I don't talk enough about my off breed dog, Andy. I mean, and I think that is a really big draw, is that I'm not going to show you just working through this with my border collie who can do everything in his sleep when he was born. you know, I show it working through with my pit bull mix, Andy, and his motivators, which, and I think one of the things that through my journeys, particularly when Andy came into the picture, and I finally realized he wasn't a border collie and I couldn't teach him like a border collie, and I had to figure out what motivated him, and I had to figure out, how, just so many of the things that I had to figure out that no one could help me with. And it's not that there weren't trainers out there who couldn't help me, but there is a in there are people out there, but there is also a lack of availability of being able to see. Like, I couldn't find anyone else running a dog like Andy. And there's like very few people. Like, yeah, TikTok is wonderful because now we do get to connect with people. But I'm going to tell you, my feed in general is people running border collies and um, Aussies and um, Malinois and healers. The pitbull mix that comes across my feed is. Have I ever seen a pitbull mix besides mine come across my feed? No. I've seen Melinda's Hopper. I've seen a hound mix come across. And like occasionally, and then like when I post my "Can you do it with a pitbull" series, people will say, "Oh, hey, I do it," and then they come out and I see their stuff. But it's not so much out there, and you want to see someone running a dog like you are running. It is different, and there are some great platforms out there. I love Fenzi. I did some of Susan Garrett's stuff for a while, and um, what I will say is that they will often demonstrate with, a bully mix or another like shelter or rescue dog, or but then you never see them going through the steps of preparing that dog to actually trial. um and that's not to deflate or put down or in any way. That's not their goal, you know but I think that's where we have a need, is that I needed to see someone trialing a bully breed. And I was lucky that I met and made a friend, my friend Michelle, who runs Staffordshire Terriers, and they are amazing little dogs. I actually ran into someone last weekend who was also running a Staffy, a full, purebred Staffy, and they're just so far few and in between, and we all know each other because eventually we finally find each other, like we know each other, and
Like,
so
yay.
but the thing is, there are so many more of us. It's just that they don't have someone to look to,
Right.
to go, what does this look like for me? And then they get stuck in a place because there's something that's kind of specific to that breed, group of breeds and situation that they need help with, that and they need support with. They need someone who understands too. Like it was so helpful to me to just like sit at trials with Michelle, my friend Michelle, uh,
Different from my Michelle.
not healer Michelle, staffy Michelle, who and like I would sit and I would talk to her and like she knew what I was talking about with the terriers, you know, and and I can sit with border collie people and I can talk about things that Dex does, and they get it because it's a breed and they
Yeah.
understand those ten mossy.
Speaking of,
Um, and even there are the people with reactive dogs, and I can sit with them, and then we talk about things with reactive dogs like Moss. But so I think I'm really hoping, if you have a rescue or a shelter dog and it's your first dog or your second dog or I don't know, your 20th dog, but you're needing to have that community of people who understand some of these differences and some of these nuances in working with off breeds. Um, I think we're a space for you. Um, I think I am a space for you and a resource for you,
I love
um,
that. It
because
also makes me giggle because Crufts has the category ABC every year. Anything but a collie.
yes.
So it's to show all the
So,
not standard dog breeds that do run agility.
well, and the thing is, I try and do hard things with Andy. I don't go, well, he's a pit bull. He can't do what a border collie can. I go, no, he's a pit bull, and we're going to figure out how to do what the border collies do, and we'll do
It'll
it our
work.
own way, but we will do it just as well. And I had a friend at Champs in 2024 ask me, like, wouldn't you like a class for like no border collies so you don't have to compete against the border collies? And my response was no, because occasionally I beat you, and that makes me happy that my pit bull and I beat all the border collies. Because that third place right there, I bet beat a whole bunch of border collies in round 3 at Champs in 2024. So I'm like, I no, that's okay. I'm not going to beat you every time, but occasionally I'm going to. And then I'm
It's,
going to crow over you. And she's a good friend, and she's like, absolutely, you should crow over people who beat me.
and
Um,
there's a level of satisfaction to it.
well, and that's like, I started the whole can you do it with a pit bull? Um, and it's really fun, like taking stuff from Agility World Champs and going, okay, I'm gonna see if Andy can do it. And Andy's had a lot of training, and I have worked really hard to demonstrate that I can do all the things that I can do with a border collie with this dog and do them in trial. And that's not to say that everyone should go out and get a bully breed and try and do really big distance with them, because I think you're going to be miserable. You've like it's a practice and failing. It's a practice of failing all the time. But I enjoy it personally because I like that challenge and we have fun together and we keep it fun. But and I'm not saying go do that, but what I am saying is that you don't have to settle for my dog is this breed, he can't do it as well, or his weaves are always going to look this way, or he's never going to be able to send out there and do that kind of distance so that I can get in place. Um, I think your limitations with your dog, with all medical and health things being equal, are simply as much as you want them to be. Um, some things take more work than others, but if you're willing to go down that journey of figuring it out with your dog, you can do it. The Patreon is Forward Focus Agility. Again, just come and join for free, and come meet me there, and let's have some fun. And then if you want some help, it's there too.
And on that, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you had as much fun as I did.
I did. I always have fun talking about my dogs. I'm just like waiting for someone all day long to ask me about my dogs so I can talk about them.
And that could be a t-shirt.
Ask me about my dog. Don't ask me about my dogs. That should be the t-shirt. Don't ask me about my dogs unless you want to spend an hour listening to me.
I don't see a problem with that. All right, we're going to end it here. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you have an awesome rest of your day.